Good morning. Welcome into 104.5 The Zone. Hope everybody is off to a great start today. Join the conversation at any point if you would like to. 615-737-1045. We got a lot of Titans stuff to discuss. Lucas and Robert back there making it go. You want to give them a call? Put you on hold, and we can go in whichever direction you want to go today. I think, though, there's some interesting news to start the show before we talk about Titans general manager search. The next round of interviews beginning officially today. We'll tell you who the candidates are who are interviewing and who's on the schedule next. But did you happen to see the statement this morning from a former NFL starting quarterback, Derek Carr? Now, I'm not going to read this whole thing. It's 2 pages. But essentially, it's a goodbye from Carr to, in his words, Raider Nation. And talking about it breaks his heart. He doesn't get the opportunity to say goodbye in person, instead putting together a statement talking about 9 years there, so many game-winning drives, so many heartbreaking moments, on and on it goes. So he is going to be released. I don't think that there's any trade market has kind of come to fruition for Derek Carr at this point, and his contract situation is rather interesting. We'll give you some details on that here in just a second. But for all the different discussions that are going to begin this offseason, the idea of, all right, who makes sense at quarterback moving forward is top of mind. Now, Carr still has, including next season, 3 years left on his deal. And his cap hit is substantial, $34.8 million for any team that would assume it at this point. The dead money, though, is very, very manageable. So it makes a lot of sense for a team like Vegas if they're ready to move on. It sounds like Josh McDaniels is. Was anybody surprised that Josh McDaniels didn't get fired, though? I mean, I understand that he stuck with Derek Carr longer than it sounds like he wanted to. I don't know how much of that is, retrospect, given the way that this season went, but that's certainly the reporting around it after the fact. Based on some of the details, though, it doesn't sound like even if Mark Davis wanted to fire Josh McDaniel, it doesn't sound like he can afford to buy out the contract the way that their organizational cash flow goes. That's one that's going to be interesting to monitor moving forward. Either way.
Is that the number one as of now, free agent quarterback, like that's going to be at the top of those lists at the moment?
Well, Tom Brady.
And then Jimmy G.
Yeah, but I think it's probably Brady, Carr, Jimmy at this point. I think that's probably the way that most people would view it. Now, there's a couple other names out there, but nobody with the kind of resumes that those three have. Jimmy has played in the Super Bowl. Tom Brady is obviously the greatest of all time, and Derek Carr has been a above average to Pro Bowl quarterback for the better part of 9 years. And I understand why eyes are going to start wandering as we head into this offseason, because you're getting a bunch of new stuff. Why not go for more at this point? We went over the Tannehill stuff yesterday, and what the most likely path forward for this team looks to be right now. So as you start to see these names become available, just take a step back. Don't send me Aaron Rodgers uniform edits. Chris Johnson, what are you doing on the internet? Stop it. Cut it out. But everybody gets excited this time of year. It's like the anticipation of Christmas presents. You don't know exactly, though, what you're going to unwrap at general manager and, in this case, offensive coordinator moving forward. So now, to the general manager search. You have a couple of internal candidates that we've talked about several different times at this point. Ryan Cowden, who is currently the interim general manager, and the VP of player personnel, director of player personnel, Monty Ossenfort. They are scheduled to interview today with the team, the two top internal candidates. Both, Ian Rappaport said this morning of the NFL Network, both have been, quote, prime candidates in other buildings and now get a shot in their own. So the merits of that are interesting. And without, knowing, without being in these meeting rooms ourselves, it's impossible to know, who gets credit for what picks are free agents and who should get blame for the opposite. But what we know is that these two individuals are thought of highly around the league. They've had several opportunities to interview for general manager positions previously, and you have both of them sitting right here in your, in your meeting rooms. So we'll see how this process goes and how kind of quickly they expedite it. Based on what we heard from the team, after they conclude interviews, they'll send out a notification essentially saying that they've concluded interview with candidate X, Y, and Z. And kind of in years past, at least with head coaches, they've kind of said who the next candidate they plan to interview is. But we'll keep an eye on that as things go along. The more interesting stuff is the guys who are still on the table externally, because what we'll get to later on in the show is somebody's already turned them and another franchise interviewing general manager candidates down. Now, that can be for a variety of different reasons. I think that an initial reaction might be to think, well, what's wrong with this job? What's wrong with the Titans job that somebody would have an opportunity to be an NFL general manager at an interview at not one but two clubs and say, no, I'm good. I'm okay right now. There's a variety of different reasons why that can come into play, but I wouldn't get any kind of chest tightness or start to panic. The idea that an executive for the 49ers is like, we're kind of in the middle of something here. Let me let this thing play out, and then I get back to you. Maybe not the best feels for you, but not necessarily hitting the panic button just yet.
Daddy Hot Drops on YouTube, which is interesting, says, not going to mention Lamar probably being the number one free agent out there.
All right.
We don't know that yet.
We don't know that yet. But see, this is like the offseason thing, and that's cool, guys. Like, if you want to get yourself bent out of shape about Lamar Jackson, you can do that.
Cool your jets, Daddy Hot Drops.
I want us to read the weird YouTube names into the microphone, but like not acknowledge the weirdness. Just kind of like say, Diaper Daddy 6969 or whatever in the YouTube chat, and just like let it sit there. I think we shouldn't even acknowledge the weirdness in there, which is probably a name that I think exists, between the porn spam that we get in there from time to time. Anyway, 615-737-1045 is how you join the conversation, obviously. And the question at this point is, what are you looking for from the next general manager? What should his priorities, I mean, theoretically hers, but at this point, all the candidates are male. What should their first priority be? Now, we can come up with our own offseason checklist, and we can go through all the litany of issues that this particular team has right now. And talking about it with Mike Giardi of the NFL Network yesterday, for those of you who missed that interview, what Mike and I got into was basically like, yeah, these people are competitors, right? It's not just about winning battles on the field, but it's about winning negotiations, winning the draft, taking over a franchise that seems to be in decline or decay, as this one is kind of, in a spot right now, and being the person responsible for getting it back on track, turning the tide, digging Jacksonville out of the dumpster, whatever the case may be. Like, these people are competitive at their core, as are the players and coaches that they employ. But I think that there's a variety of different ways that you can approach this. And for the GM candidates who will be interviewed, I'd be fascinated to know the line of questions, like where it kind of starts from the committee that Amy Adams-Strunk has told Jim Wyatt of the team's official website that she has put together in place, consisting of a lot of Titans organizational leadership. Honestly, I think we should put it to a poll, Lucas, whenever you have a second. What should be the first question that Amy Adams-Strunk asks a Titans GM candidate in an interview? Maybe less clunky than that. Because I feel like it's got to start somewhere with like, hey, Ryan. So before we get into this, just kind of curious about your thoughts on the upcoming draft class. Where would you have Will Levis ranked on your board? and kind of see where it goes from there. Because I feel like that could be a fun exercise that comes with a variety of different answers. Just like examples like that. Just kind of like, well, what do you think of this Kentucky quarterback that apparently nobody has seen on television, according to Lance Zierlein, but everybody's got an opinion on. So we'll see how that goes through the process. Ian Cunningham is also a candidate that is scheduled for the Titans to interview. That will take place Saturday. What we are going to get into, though, coming up next, and obviously your phone calls on the Titans GM search, coaching movement across the league and kind of the different parts and pieces that are moving around right now. Who is actually a coordinator candidate versus who's interviewing to be a head coach for the second time. There's a variety of different names out there that are interesting, and we'll get into them coming up next. So, what would be the first question if you were Titans ownership that you'd ask a GM candidate? There's a variety of different ways that you could go with that direction. I mean, I think, first and foremost, it's got to start with, all right, what do you think we are right now? And how far away is that, I guess, from what we need to be as a football team? And kind of outline the general strengths and deficiencies of where this roster is right now. And as far as a coaching philosophy, kind of where that gels. Those are big 1,000-foot questions, but I mean, the process that you go about answering them this offseason is critical, given that it seems so far frayed from what they're actually trying to be. Now, we had what was the name of the commenter? You want to read that again to the microphone? Oh, he's looking for it. I think it's
Daddy Hot Drops.
Daddy Hot Drops on YouTube. I'm just curious how people come up with these names. Bring up Lamar Jackson, who is looking doubtful at this time to play in the Ravens' first playoff game in Super Wildcard Weekend against the Cincinnati Bengals. Been out for over a month now dealing with a PCL sprain. And the reasons for it, there's been nothing credibly reported beyond it's just taking longer than people expected. Robert, what am I to make of your beloved Baltimore Ravens and Lamar Jackson at this time, who is nowhere to be found, and other than, sports talk radio locally in Baltimore speculating about where he is mentally or as far as checked in or checked out to the process? What do you make of all this?
I think we got some clarity yesterday, and we might have the clip. I'm not sure. I put it in our DM yesterday, but Lamar retweeted something from, I believe it was Jim Trotter. He was doing a hit on ESPN, and for Lamar to retweet that statement, I thought was pretty telling about the situation. And Jim was going on about how he doesn't believe this is contract related. He really believes this is injury related, as another player approached Trotter and wanted to discuss the severity of the PCL injury and how that injury, as it is a 2 to 4 recovery back to the field time, it's not a 2 to 4 week back to 100% recovery. And so the reports are that Lamar is dealing with really bad swelling in his knee, and it's not likely at all that he's going to see the practice field this week. Now, if he gets on the field, I'm going to hold out hope, because they got medicine. We got modern day stuff, right? We couldn't stick a needle in him. What's that remember the Titans? God, what I give it a 10. What's that movie? Why am I asking you? You don't know any movies.
I don't know any movies.
Don't you put that needle in his leg.
Ricky Bobby?
No. Oh, my God.
Are you talking about cut around the meat?
No, not even close, man. With that mean coach. Anyway.
I have no idea.
Isn't it something like Varsity Blues or something like that? Yeah.
There you go. I give it a 10. I give you like a 1.5.
Oh, I'm sorry. You're the one who just stumbled and rolled their way through whatever the hell that was supposed to be. Well done on the clean execution of that.
Anyway, I think it's probably a long shot, and that he plays this weekend, and probably, if I'm being honest, a long shot that even Tyler Huntley plays.
No, he wasn't throwing in practice yesterday either.
He wasn't throwing in practice. He's dealing with shoulder tendonitis, and it looks like Anthony Brown's going to probably get the start, former Oregon guy.
Okay, I didn't ask you about Anthony Brown. Shut it down and let me hear from Jim Trotter.
You got any more Varsity Blues quotes?
Oh, let me take, excuse me, the contract situation off the table for a minute. 2 weeks ago, I was at a game, and a player, unsolicited, came up to me and asked me about Lamar. And he said to me, I sprained my PCL in week 1. He said, I'm still not right. He said, I came back only because our team is in the playoff hunt. He said, if Lamar has a grade 2 sprain, PCL sprain, he said, even if he gets back on the field for the playoffs, he is not going to be the same Lamar that we know. So from that standpoint, I think you could see I shouldn't say frustration, but you could see where John Harbaugh was on this, that there's really not a lot you can do physically if he is not ready. And clearly, physically, he is not ready. So I hate to hear the contract situation brought into this, because if you know Lamar, that's not what he's about in terms of he wants to be there for his guys. I remember going back to the day after the draft and saying to Lamar, if you have a chance for the Hall of Fame, a gold jacket, or a Super Bowl trophy, which would you take? And without hesitation, he said, a Super Bowl, Vince Lombardi trophy. Why? Because that means he has done something special for him and his teammates. So he is not that individual egotistical guy. I don't believe this is about contract. I believe this is truly about his health and him wanting to be right so that he can perform for his teammates.
So Lamar Jackson retweeted that Jim Trotter clip discussing the situation. Robert, where did the timeline come from? Because that, I think, is the thing this is why Mike Vrabel doesn't traffic in these things. This is why, we all pointed and laughed at Frank Reich when he gave that, 5 to 12 week timeline on Carson Wentz that one year. It serves the player precious little, especially a player with the kind of platform that Lamar has in a contract year.
Yeah, I'll give it 1 to 11 months.
It was John Harbaugh. He stepped out in front of it and said, and the quote was, I could probably find this somewhere, he might not miss any time at all, was the John Harbaugh quote. I think it was the Monday after the game he was injured in. And it's troubling and it's frustrating because this is essentially the same thing that happened last year with the turf toe injury. Mm-hmm. They kept saying he's looking better. He's looking like he's almost there. He's looking like he's almost there. And I think that's the frustrating thing when none of us are in-house. None of us are in there seeing his rehab. So all we can do is speculate and say he's not out there again. He's not out there again. When maybe, and this is like a painful truth possibly, that he just isn't a good healer. He isn't good at recouping from these injuries. And for somebody that is a running quarterback, even though the 2 injuries were sustained in the pocket, that knocked him out of the two. Thank you.
Let the man talk.
It's just so fast.
That is frustrating as a Ravens fan. And as someone that might be wanting to bet on this game as the line opened up at 6, and then someone poured in like $500,000 to the Ravens side, and now it's ballooned up to -8. So I'll be steering clear.
We got people lobbing Varsity Blues quotes in the YouTube chat.
Love that.
Chris, maybe I don't want your life.
Yeah. Fire that pigskin.
It really is shocking how bad we are with movie quotes. I feel like most talk radio people can rattle nonsense off like that just basically as a part of their dialect, and we struggle. I feel collectively.
I feel like you struggle.
Okay, where were you in the middle of all that? What did you offer in the middle of Robert petering out that way?
Just letting it play out.
Easy to lob shots that way. So, yes, as far as the Lamar Jackson situation goes, and I understand the need to start at least, I'm not telling you can't talk about it. You know what I'm saying? Whatever makes you happy. If it gets you through the next 8 months before an actual competitive football game is played to talk about future Titans quarterback Lamar Jackson, then all right, go get him, bud. But at this stage, there is a situation ongoing there that is very complicated and a team that doesn't quite have it all figured out at this stage. Now, some news courtesy of Jeremy Fowler at ESPN. The Titans have requested to speak with Commanders defensive backs coach Chris Harris for a position on the defensive staff per sources. Could be a defensive backs/pass game coordinator type role. Harris could also get defensive coordinator looks around the league too. That's Jeremy Fowler about a half hour ago. And remember that they fired Anthony Midget, or was not retained, the secondary coach, along with Todd Downing, Keith Carter, and an offensive assistant, Eric Frazier. So, the questions for the general manager candidates that the Titans are interviewing. 2 in-house today, Ian Cunningham of the Bears on Saturday. What would your line of questioning look like? Because I think there's a lot of vital questions that these candidates need to be prepared for. Chuck in Clarksville is next. Hey, Chuck.
Hey, Buck. Hey, on that general manager search, I really like this Ian Cunningham, and I'll tell you why. He's trained under Ozzie Newsome, who I think is one of the top GMs of all time, one of my favorite players of all time, too. But I think it was one of the top GMs of all time. And I think we need to get away from the New England, tree of everything going New England. And I think this would be a good start, and I think he'd be somebody that Vrabel could work with. And I believe he could bring in a scouting team that would outdo what we've had so far. So that's my opinion. I like Ian Cunningham.
Thank you for the call, Chuck. So here's a little bit of information about Ian Cunningham. And And maybe, I mean, do you think it would be productive? These things move so quickly. Do you think it'd be productive to get other people from markets who know these guys better than obviously we could? Like, I know general information about these candidates, but on a more like localized level, do you think that'd be a productive use of our time at some point?
I mean, think about it on the flip side. Like, what would you be able to offer if somebody asked you to join the show and tell them about Ryan Cowden?
Well, certainly more than I could offer them about Adam Peters or like I know I've been around long enough to know Ryan a little bit and know Monty a little bit. Now, I'm not saying that, we eat dinner at each other's houses or anything like that, but like I have a general sense of how involved they are, what their interests how their interests kind of align and the opportunity that a lot of teams have had to look at them and why they may not have gotten a job just yet. Because I think that's a question that a lot of people ask is if they're so great, why didn't Carolina hire them or Pittsburgh hire them the last time around?
Tyler on YouTube says, would you have traded A.J. Brown? That's question number one.
Did we put it on a poll?
Put what on a poll?
That question. What would be the first question you would ask a Titans general manager candidate?
No, that is not up.
Well, if you would, at your convenience, I feel that would yield some pretty interesting commentary.
Yeah, if I get around to it.
Okay, very good. Take
Mine would be GIF or GIF.
And what's the correct answer there?
It's GIF.
Because
the man who created it said that's what it is.
That's something that's cited all the time. I've seen nothing, no investigative journalism done on this. What is this person's name other than the creator of the GIF, allegedly?
Look into it.
Okay, very good. At your convenience. So here's what you need to know about Ian Cunningham, just from a top-down level. So he was hired by Ryan Poles, who has just concluded his first season as the Bears general manager, to essentially be what Ryan Cowden was to John Robinson, your right-hand man. So those guys have spent a lot of time together. Now, the merits of Ryan Poles at this point taking over Chicago, they're obviously in a unique situation. They've got the number 1 overall pick. It's going to be a fascinating offseason for them. But prior to joining the Bears, Ian Cunningham was with the Eagles for 5 seasons. He was their director of college scouting before moving up to director of player personnel in the 2021 season. So essentially, he helped Howie Roseman put together this current Eagles team. Now, obviously, you can't attribute, without being in the room, who is most responsible for what decision. There's just no way that we can possibly know that from being outside of each of these facilities. But Ian Cunningham is somebody who is also well-regarded, obviously, and has spent a lot of time around a lot of successful people and has been a part of very successful team-building processes that now yield. They're not the Super Bowl favorites, the Eagles. I think that still goes to the Bills as we get ready for Super Wild Card Weekend. But Ian Cunningham is going to be of interest to a lot of different NFL teams. Right now, the Titans and the Cardinals are the two reported teams that have filed interview requests with Chicago for their assistant GM in Ian Cunningham. As far as the rest of this stuff goes, and kind of keeping tabs on some of the coaching movement, the idea that we haven't talked about, for example, David Shaw, who informed Stanford that he was going to no longer be coaching there, decided to leave on his own terms. Now, whether he was approached, I don't know the dynamics there, but whether he was approached and said, hey, we're looking to go a different direction. We don't want to fire you if you'd prefer to do it on your own terms. Sometimes that's the case, and David Shaw has been at Stanford long enough to earn something like that. Regardless, he's not going back to college football. And David Shaw, how long has David Shaw been discussed as an NFL head coaching candidate? Years at this point, right? Like at least 4 or 5 years where I remember his name consistently being floated in these conversations without actually taking interviews.
Yeah, especially at his peak at Stanford, which tailed off there at the end. But that's a tough place to win right now.
So the Broncos are the organization who have most recently interviewed David Shaw. That was yesterday for their head coaching position. Now, he's been in the NFL before, late 90s into the early 2000s. He was with the Eagles, the Raiders, and then the Ravens. Now, it looks like at this point, he's only 50 years old, and he's looking to get back into the pros. I guess, he feels like his time at Stanford is kind of peaked already, obviously, and now it's been a bit of a struggle for them to get it right. They lost to BYU in their season finale, their second straight 3-9 season. So it's understandable why he would be interested in stepping away. And then there's Jim Harbaugh, who we didn't talk about old Jim's statement about that he fully expects to be the coach of the Michigan Wolverines next year. Fully expects, not any kind of hard commitment, not any kind of I am going to be the next coach of the coach of the Wolverines next year. No, now he's interested in interviewing for NFL jobs too.
Yeah, there's an unless there in the I fully expect to be the head coach of Michigan. Unless
unless the Minnesota Vikings call me up and say, "Hey, we want to interview you for 9 hours in the middle of the National Signing Day."
I think it's very clear where Jim Harbaugh stands, right? I think he's happy where he is. He will continue being the head coach at Michigan unless.
So, Jim Harbaugh, and, he's in the Colts Ring of Honor. There's going to be a connection there. He has had success building programs up before, both in the college ranks. Michigan was a rebuild. Stanford at the time, he did well to build them into a legitimate college football program. And, of course, when he got a hold of the 49ers, they were not a successful organization. Took them to the Super Bowl, where ultimately they lost to Robert Walsh's Ravens in 2000, or at least in the 2012 season. That would have been the 13 Super Bowl. But these kind of guys are being sprinkled into the mix as far as college coaches who are now interviewing in these for some of these openings. And the list of openings is varied. You have teams who are tripping over themselves to try and get even a request to interview Sean Payton. Arizona, the latest I saw. That honestly, that I would love to see Sean Payton end up in Arizona. I don't know how far away they are from being like competent as an organization, but I feel like if you got a shot for Kyler Murray to be anything beyond what we've already seen, like Sean Payton would be an interesting kind of marriage to see if they could make that one work. You have the head coach of the Panthers, who I thought, Steve Wilks, the interim, who they've already completed an interview with. I thought Steve Wilks more than earned the opportunity to get a legitimate shot at this thing, and how real that interview is, given the amount of candidates. There's at least 9 that I see that they've asked to interview in Carolina, including Frank Reich, who we talked about yesterday. And is Frank Reich any kind of an offensive coordinator candidate, or is this dude at the point where he's taking head coaching gigs at this stage? I don't know if Frank Reich would have been able to do better than by record and by win percentage than Jeff Saturday did. I know that they wouldn't have looked like they were being run by somebody who didn't know how to be an NFL head coach, because of course he doesn't, Jeff Saturday. And that I mean, there's been not a ton of movement around that right now, which has been surprising to me. So all the different openings around the league and people that make the most sense for these gigs, Jeff Saturday has not had a scheduled interview with them yet, according to the reporting around this, where Ben Johnson, the Lions OC, guys like Raheem Morris, who've been around for some time, currently with the Rams, people on their own staff who expressed displeasure with the Saturday hiring, Bubba Ventrone, who has been, who wants the opportunity to be an NFL head coach, their special teams coordinator, who they've completed an interview with. And so those are the kind of things that you have to keep an eye on as you talk about who are real shots that the Titans have as an OC, because I just don't think Frank Reich's taking those kind of jobs right now. Now, maybe we'll see. We'll see how many more interviews he goes on and how much interest in Frank Reich there actually is. There were obvious reasons why he ended up on the outs in Indianapolis, and nobody's questioning his ability to be a play caller. But is he actually wanting to go back down to the ranks of the play caller? Something to keep in mind. Trey in Nashville's next. Hey, Trey.
What's up, buddy?
How are you?
I'm great. Hey, big bro. I'm just saying, like, every year, like, you know, I've been following you for a while. I'm Trevelyan online. I'm like one of your guys, but you know, dude, it's like everybody's like fishing out of the same pool. You know what I'm saying? Like linebackers, like Nebraska, Oklahoma, Iowa. Get some guys in there that's gonna catch the ball. The general manager he needs somebody that's gonna catch the ball. That's it. I don't care if they throw 2-3 interceptions. Catch the ball. You know what I'm saying? Steve, do something, I want somebody in there that's capable of doing their job better than what we've seen before. That's it. And you have a good day, buddy.
You too, buddy. Thank you for the call, Trey. So he said, "Do you know what I'm saying?" I mean, yeah, kind of, but what are you talking about? Don't care if he throws interceptions. All right, you want people to do their jobs better. I don't think that's an unreasonable request. We'll have time to talk more about that. Somebody who has been doing their jobs better as of late. They lost last night, but the local professional hockey team, kids, kind of been making some noise. We haven't been paying close attention to it as of late, but if you turn around, I think it's far past time for a Panzeek or Preds minute. So we'll do that coming up next. We have not done a Panzeek or Preds Minute, I don't think this season, have we?
I don't think so.
They were down bad earlier, so in the middle of football season, you kind of let everything else die down around it before you turn your attention to what the hockey team's doing. But prior to last night, they fell on the road at the Maple Leafs 2-1, the Preds did. But they had won 4 straight, and 5 of their last 6. They had they'd been scoring at will, and it'd been a really refreshing change of pace given that they've struggled for a good early portion of the season. They're 19-15-6 right now, 5th in the Central Division. Before we do the Panzeek Preds Minute, though, real quick, just wanted to give a shout-out to Pete Weber, who's been dealing with illness. NPH is the acronym that is used to describe it. It's a situation that affects his balance specifically, and he's been away from their broadcast for some time. But Pete's obviously an icon, voice of the Predators. He's right up there with Mike Keith and what they do for the community, what they mean for the community. So we hope that Pete is recovering well. Sounds like he had a successful procedure at Vandy on Monday and is en route to a full recovery, no matter how long that takes. So just wanted to say that we're thinking of Pete and his family, and glad to see that things are on track.
Yeah, sounds like he'll be back in the booth sooner rather than later, which is awesome news. But Preds have been playing well. I mean, you mentioned a 4-game win streak, all those wins on this road trip where they finally fall last night in Toronto 2-1. They give up a double minor right at the end of the third period. Goal scored with a minute 15 or so left on the clock. Preds fall to the Toronto Maple Leafs, but they've really strung together some great offensive performances on the road. Last night, in fact, they're held to 2 goals or less for the first time since December 27th. So that run that they went on, putting up 4 against the Golden Knights in an overtime loss, 6 against the Canadiens, who they play tonight, by the way, in a win, 5 against the Hurricanes, 3-2 win over the Caps, 3-0 win over the Senators, and then they fall last night 2-1 to the Maple Leafs. A healthy Ryan McDonough has been really impactful for this team. Their power play hasn't been good. Their penalty kill has been middle of the pack, but they've just found ways to score. They found more consistency on offense, and the physicality really appears to be their biggest advantage night in and night out, which I think could make them a threat in the postseason. But they're slowly but surely crawling their way back into playoff position as they sit now 3 points out of a wild card spot in the Western Conference. Edmonton currently holds that second wild card spot in the West. Preds 3 points back of that. So another road game tonight as they take on the Montreal Canadiens, a team that, as I said, they beat just about a week ago, 6-3 at Bridgestone Arena, and then they will turn around and return home for a homestand here in Nashville. They will host the Buffalo Sabres coming up on Saturday.
I thought about buying tickets for Saturday's game, but every time I go to a game, they lose.
Yeah, you're 0 what?
I'm like 0-7.
Wow.
In the last 2
That's
seasons.
almost impressive.
No. Are you kidding me? I'm lighting money on fire to completely derail the hockey team. I feel like I should have like a restraining order within 500 feet of Bridgestone Arena at this point. I love going to Preds games, and every time I go, they look terrible. I don't know. Bad vibes when I'm in the building? That's tough. I'm always scared that there's and not that this would happen, but I've seen it happen before. Like you get caught on the Jumbotron and you get booed, because now this is a thing. Like I'm 0-7 in the arena every time I go.
You're afraid you would get booed if you got caught on the Jumbotron?
I think there's enough discussion around it that I would get booed.
I think there is a 0% chance you would get booed.
You think that's so?
Yes.
Okay. I'm willing to take that. I'm willing to take that risk. I want to go to this game on. So we should go to a Preds game.
Yeah.
Team activity?
Yeah.
I don't know. Is Robert going to get naked?
Robert's been to a couple Preds games now. He just came over. He came over from Carolina Hurricanes country.
Has he? I mean, has he remained clothed? Though is my question. I don't care how many games he's been to. Has he been clothed? You know, I imagine he's somebody who straps a catfish to his leg before he walks into the arena with saran wrap or whatever it is.
As far as I know, Robert Walsh is typically clothed in public. But I'm not always around him, so who's to say?
The pizza guy.
But yeah, Preds at the Canadiens tonight. They'll try to finish out what's been a really good road trip strong, and then they will return home to host Buffalo Saturday, and then Calgary Monday, and then Columbus on Tuesday before they hit the road again to St. Louis. Funny thing about the Columbus Blue Jackets game, Tuesday, January 17th in Bridgestone Arena, it is, they're doing, all these themed, we've been giving away tickets, by the way, today, 220, Blaine and Mickey, right here on the Zone.
Nice.
Giving away Preds tickets for their Margaritaville night coming up in a couple of weeks.
Ooh, spicy.
We were doing a giveaway for the Preds Blue Jackets game the other day where they did a Tennessee fan appreciation night recently, and they're going to do a Kentucky fan appreciation night coming up on Tuesday. So you wear your Kentucky blue, and there'll be Kentucky gear, a lot of Kentucky fans in and around the Nashville area, and in, a lot of Preds fans in Kentucky.
Still?
But they're playing the Blue Jackets, which I thought was interesting, to invite a lot of blue into the arena on a night that you're playing the Blue Jackets. It's like if we're going to do a Kentucky fan appreciation night, which is great, there's a lot of Preds fans in Kentucky, maybe do it against someone that isn't the Blue Jackets or the Blues.
Yeah, that's an interesting dynamic because I haven't heard of and maybe this is more common in things like hockey or maybe baseball, but like, do they do that often where they have a Kentucky fan appreciation night, or is it just because of like the logistics of how close we are to our friends in Western Kentucky?
I'm not sure. But either way, you want Preds tickets, tune in to Blaine and Mickey later today. Daddy Hot Drops, who's very active in the YouTube chat today, says, I think Buck thinks he's more famous than he is. Yeah, I think I agree with Daddy Hot Drops, that you would think you would get booed if they showed you on the Jumbotron.
I'm going to tell you a story off the air about a situation that happened that is not helpful to the on-air radio. I would agree with Daddy Hot Drops' assessment just generally. Yes, I do agree with that statement. But this is somebody of much less... a situation that caused a very big booing at Bridgestone Arena with somebody that I think you'll find funny that I can't say on the air right now. So we'll do that later. Meantime, that's a Panzeca Preds Minute. Do you feel good about what you accomplished there? Just a literal dead catfish in my lap with that.
Yes.
Okay, good. Back to the Titans. 615-737-1045 is how you join the conversation. A general manager request by the Titans that was turned down. We'll tell you more about that in just a second. I'm Buck Rising. It's 104.5 The Zone.
It is 10:59. Good morning from the Superbook.com sports desk. I'm Lucas Panzica. The Nashville Predators' 4-game unbeaten run on the road came to an end on Wednesday, a 2-1 loss at the Toronto Maple Leafs. Mitch Marner scoring the game winner on a Toronto power play with just over a minute left. The Preds fall to 15-6. They will stay on the road tonight, a 6 p.m. puck drop at the Montreal Canadiens. Preds are 3 points out of a playoff spot in the Western Conference. Interviews for the Titans general manager opening officially begin today. The two in-house candidates, Ryan Cowden and Monty Austinfort, will interview today, as Bears assistant general manager Ian Cunningham will interview on Saturday. Speaking of the Bears, Ian Rappaport reporting this morning, Big Ten Commissioner Kevin Warren expected to be named the new president and CEO of the Chicago Bears. And other NFL news, Adam Schefter reporting that if the AFC Championship game is indeed held at a neutral site between Bills and Chiefs, it would be Mercedes-Benz Stadium in Atlanta, Georgia. For all your foundation repair and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once in your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
Second hour off and rolling. Welcome into 104.5 The Zone. Lucas and Robert making it go. We're with you until 1 o'clock today. Join at any point. 615-737-1045 is the number. 615-737-1045. So there is a lot of discussion, given that the Titans are interviewing general manager candidates today, the two in-house ones in particular, and a number of different people that they have requested the opportunity to speak to. The list, again, and we'll go through it with you, including Ryan Cowden and Monty Austinfort. They have requested to speak with Malik Boyd of the Bills, Rand Carthen of the 49ers, Glenn Cook, who is the assistant GM of the Browns, Quentin Harris, Cardinals Vice President of Player Personnel, and Ian Cunningham, the Bears assistant GM. Now, one name that's already been removed from that list is that of Adam Peters. Adam Peters is and was expected to be one of the most sought-after general manager candidates in this cycle. He is currently the assistant GM of the 49ers, and obviously San Francisco has done very, very well to put themselves in a position personnel-wise to succeed. Now, he has declined both the Titans interview request and the Cardinals, according to Ian Rappaport yesterday afternoon. While Peters has, this is the quote, while Peters has great respect for those organizations, his focus is on supporting the 49ers during their playoff run. Now, as we started the show with, there may be an initial reaction to kind of be like, oh, why doesn't he want this job? Who wouldn't want this job? What's wrong with this job that somebody that would automatically decline, not automatically, but take, about 6 hours and turn down the interview request from any NFL team, even as the Cardinals and Titans are both in complicated situations of their own. I think it's important to add that that Adam Peters has been in the NFL for 20 years. He's in his second season as the assistant GM for the 49ers, and he's been with them for 4 previous after spending 8 seasons with the Broncos. He's from California. He grew up a Niners fan, and he seems really invested in what it is that they're doing, which is what you want. They have the potential, the 49ers do, on their third quarterback of the season, they have the potential to compete for a Super Bowl. Philadelphia is the thing that most stands in their way, but it would be easy, I think, to imagine a scenario where all of a sudden San Francisco is playing in the NFC Championship game against Philadelphia, and at that point, anything can happen. So Adam Peters is going to ride it out with San Fran right now. And while I do find him interesting, as do many NFL franchises, you have to be prepared for things like that. So that's one of 2 San Francisco GM candidates that they're interested in. As we mentioned, the other is Rand Carthen. We talked a little bit about him yesterday, spent time in Philadelphia. A lot of these people, by the way, are being met with at the NFL Coach and Front Office Accelerator Program, which we haven't really talked about, but something that most recently Titans running back coach Tony Dews took part in, which is a program instituted this past offseason to include like developmental sessions as far as like leadership and coaching are concerned with football ops, experts, and people who are going to be able to better facilitate networking with club ownership that may not. How often is Tony Dews, the running back coach, going to be able to get in front of Robert Kraft, the Patriots ownership, right? Like that's specifically designed to continue to further advancement as far as the diversity of hiring is concerned. So a lot of NFL teams are meeting with these candidates, both coaching and executives, at the inaugural NFL or at the NFL Coach and Front Office Accelerator situation. So that's another place where I know the Titans have made contact with a couple of these guys who have been mentioned before. Playing experience, both college and pro, as we spoke on yesterday, it seems to be a value. All 8 of them at this point have played football at some point in their college or professional careers. And how applicable that is to, what the identity of the football team is going to be moving forward, those are questions that we simply don't have the answers to right now. But something to keep an eye on at this point. Since we're not going to have a ton of college football discussion in the next couple of weeks, Lucas brought this story to my attention a couple of minutes ago as we were coming back about Jaden Rashada, who's a 4-star quarterback who has been through all kinds of different enrollment and then unenrollment, national letter of intent signing and then release. Like it's a very, very complicated situation that's going down and speaks to a larger issue at the University of Florida, who obviously Tennessee Vols fans are invested in. So 2 weeks ago, they're at the Under Armour All-American Bowl, and Jaden Rashada is talking to media members who are in attendance, who cover recruiting and things of that nature, how excited he is to enroll at Florida. So now we get to about, let's call it 19, 20 hours ago, and the reports are that Jaden Rashada has now requested for his NLI, National Letter of Intent, to be released by Florida. Apparently, he was on a call with Scott Strickland, their athletic director, requesting the release. And per the NCAA, an institution may release a signee from his or her NLI obligation by selecting the complete release option on the NLI request release. It is the institution's discretion to grant a release or not. So the details on this are the most interesting because this is somebody who's already flipped from the University of Miami to Florida back during the fall. I think around November is when it took place. So now he's pulling a similar move, and Florida, to my knowledge, Lucas, you could expand on this, Florida doesn't appear to have a quarterback in its 2023 class. And no real clear answers at quarterback moving forward, given that Anthony Richardson declared this year.
Yeah, these stories are tough to follow because it's almost like you have to pick and choose who to believe, right? Like you have to decide whether or not you want to believe his parents speaking to reporters on what they were promised, or the school or the collective or coaches that reporters speak to, because these figures are not public information. It was like Jimbo Fisher going at that one College Station local television reporter about Texas A&M being accused of buying all its players, and Jimbo asking, well, did you do your research? Did you do your research? Like accusing him of not doing. Well, we can't, Jimbo. We literally can't.
We literally can't. The numbers are kept from us, you cowards.
So the Orlando Sentinel has been out there with this, and essentially the report from the Orlando Sentinel was that Jaden Rashada is trying to get out of his national letter of intent with Florida. He has not enrolled in classes at Florida. And the reason for that, the reporter is Edgar Thompson, a lucrative NIL deal between a Florida collective and Rashada was not honored. So the report goes on to say Rashada returned home to Pittsburgh, which is a suburb of San Francisco. He's a West Coast guy. After an NIL agreement for around $13 million was not honored, a source told the Orlando Sentinel.
Wow. Real money.
Yeah, so
not real money, I guess.
Right. Well, who's to say?
Yeah.
Jaden Rashada's father told 24/7 Sports that his son has not requested a release from Florida. He rebuked that report.
In the name of Jesus?
Maybe not in the name of Jesus, but you know what? $13 million is involved. So.
Yeah, I rebuke that in the name of Jesus.
I'm saying.
So I have no idea how this is going to play out, but this is an example of a messy situation in recruiting when a school may or may not have their NIL situation totally together, maybe are promising checks that they can't cash to secure commitments from guys like Jaden Rashada, who, like you said, was previously committed to Miami and then back to Florida. This has been a whole saga, and it probably would kind of venture over to the side of people that were against NIL and the way that it's structured in college football about how it can negatively impact recruiting. This would certainly be a case for that, although this is one of the first cases that we've seen this public in that sense of a blue-chip guy with a messy situation like this now backing out of a national letter of intent because he reportedly was not honored. It was not the $13 million he was promised was not honored by the Florida collective. Either way, things are not great right now in Gainesville, Florida. No, I mean, the situation, the vibes are not good right now with Florida football. Like, Billy Napier is a great football coach. He's a proven recruiter, and he finished strong in the 2022 class or 2023 class, but Rashada obviously would be a big hit to that class if he ends up not being a part of it. I don't know who the quarterback of the future is for Florida.
Not the guy I watched lose to Oregon State or whatever it was.
Jack Miller, the former four-star. Graham Mertz was the transfer portal addition that Florida picked up, the transfer out of Wisconsin, not necessarily inspiring. And we're in an era where you can fix the quarterback position like that if it's an attractive option in the transfer portal. But 6-6.
You're behind the eight ball at this point. Like, you are significantly behind.
I don't know who's starting. I mean, Graham Mertz is probably starting for Florida in 2023, and I don't know that excites any Florida fans. 6-6 in year one of Billy Napier, and I know these bowl games are meaningless to a lot of people.
Not when you lose like that.
They go to the Las Vegas Bowl to play a top 15 Oregon State team that had a lot to play for, a team that was looking for a 10-win season. And that was red hot, coming off a massive comeback win over arch rival Oregon in the regular season finale. And they play in Vegas, and my goodness, did Florida look lifeless in that game. 30-3 was the final. The body language was as bad as we saw throughout the entirety of the bowl season. And I don't know, there's not a lot to be optimistic right now about Florida football. Other than the fact that Billy Napier is a good, proven football coach and a good, proven recruiter, but the news that has surrounded Florida football over the last few months just has not been very positive.
So this is the thing that we now have to factor in and will become more common, I think, as far as recruiting discourse is concerned, is can you actually cash the checks that you're writing? Because Lucas is right. We haven't seen anything quite this scale. Like, reportedly, and without any kind of verification, because these things don't have to be disclosed, let's say it's ballpark $13 million, okay? That is legitimately difference-making money. If you make all these promises and lead not just a high school recruit, but his family, who I'm certain is factoring in the financials to whatever decision their son or daughter end up making when it comes to their college athletic choices, you have to have your bleep together. You can't be this. Alabama has kind of not been as great as you would have expected on the NIL front. Multiple reports have been out there about Ryan Day's dissatisfaction with the way that Ohio State is managing or not managing well their NIL situation relative to other universities of their same stature. These are the kind of things that are now difference makers. And because the players have more freedom than they've ever been, there will be, I think, a reaction, as you said, the idea of, oh, well, this is why this stuff has completely ruined college football and blah, blah, blah. Well, no, it's not on the player. The player is committing to the university based on things that are being promised. Now, as opposed to just having to accept those situations and not having much mobility after the fact, The player has more control than they've ever had, rightfully so, frankly. I don't know how you can look at the situation, and I think most rational people would, but I don't know how anybody could look at the situation and not think that this is Florida's fault. And that Jalen Rashada, maybe it's okay, so he's flip-flopped a couple of times. All right, get the offer right. It's no longer just about do you jive with the coaching staff and are you the right fit?
Yeah.
It's you've told me these are the things that you're going to do. And now we're talking about actual cold, hard cash here.
Which is going to be a massive source of frustration for coaches that have little to no control over these things.
And that is because I think you don't have to go to extremes, right? You don't have to say to the coaches, well, tough. Like, no, the coaches should now have a relative expectation, a standard of what their NIL, arm is supposed to be doing in its function. And without being directly involved on that, because obviously that's not like a part of the coaching staff or anything like it. You have to keep these things kind of separated, I guess. But coaches should also have a reasonable expectation that their university is going to commit and their boosters are going to commit and their athletic department is going to commit to getting these things right so they can continue to remain competitive. Because, yeah, it has taken a degree of power out of the coach's hands. And while I think balancing that out is better, I completely understand why they would be frustrated if you're not in a spot that has their bleep together.
Little bit of news. Former Vanderbilt head coach Derek Mason announcing in a statement just minutes ago on social media that he is stepping away from coaching, going on a sabbatical from college football.
Most recently with
Oklahoma State.
Oklahoma State.
Yeah, defensive coordinator at Oklahoma State. Auburn at 1 year before that. Or at Auburn for 1 year before that.
Yeah, during the okay. Well, that's interesting. I hope everything's okay. Maybe he just needs a break. Okay, 615-737-1045 is how you jump in on the conversation. Maddy Glab, the Buffalo Bills team reporter, is going to join us coming up next. Obviously, tremendous news with Damar Hamlin being released from the hospital yesterday, the Bills safety. We're going to get the latest on that coming up next. Great news coming out of the NFL world yesterday, and not just the sports world paying close attention to everything that's been happening around Bill safety Damar Hamlin. But released from the hospital yesterday, given clearance to continue his recovery process at home. Bills reporter Maddy Glab joins us back on the show. Been a while since we've talked to Maddy, but very happy to have you back. How are you?
Yeah, happy to be back on the show. You know, there's so much joy in this building after all the good news that we've continuously heard about Damar Hamlin. It was a little touch and go after the game. You know, nobody knew what was going to happen. Nobody knew what was going on, really. And since then, it's been good update after even better update. And to hear that he's been released from the hospital that he was at in Buffalo is just incredible. We heard from Josh Allen yesterday after practice, and somebody asked, you know, Josh, have you guys gone to see Damar yet? And he was like, we all want to go see him so badly, but we've been told to give him a couple days at home to rest and relax before, 53 people bombard him.
So what was your vantage point, I guess, during that game, Maddy? Because we obviously everybody who wasn't at the game or covering the game saw what happened on TV, and they did, obviously the best possible job they could given the circumstances, relaying information where not much information was there to be had as often as people were trying to get a hold of it. What was it like from your vantage point to kind of see everything go down, and how much did you learn after the fact, given that, in the stadium, I imagine the experience was much different than it being discussed on television that way?
Yeah, I had the vantage point that a lot of people did because we were actually doing the game from home from Buffalo because we do a pregame and 2 postgame shows from our facility. So we were watching in our control room with a slew of people who had just come off doing the pregame show. You're talking about this game being a shootout and all the offensive weapons that we were going to see and Josh Allen and Joe Burrow. So you come off this high of this game that everybody has been waiting for weeks. And the fact that it was toward the end of the regular season and the playoff implications that went into it. And then it quickly went away there as Damar Hamlin collapsed on the field. And we were without a lot of information for a while. And we quickly realized, okay, this game is not going to be played probably. And we're not going to do a post-game show because why would we do, even if the game were to be played, why would we do a post-game show if something like this has happened on the field and, we're not sure about the status of a player's health. And then, the game was suspended and afterward it was, we're not sure if it's going to be played or when it's going to be made up. But knowing that the game was suspended, I really wasn't surprised because of the type of head coach Sean McDermott is and because of the type of players that are in that locker room. They are all about their players, the love that they have for the people inside of this building. So I wasn't surprised that they put Damar Hamlin's health over the game in that moment.
Maddy Glab, Bills reporter, here with us on 104.5 The Zone. At Maddy Glab is where you can follow her on Twitter for her insights and analysis. So for those of us who don't know Sean McDermott, like obviously Middle Tennessee, the audience is slightly different, and many people have seen social media clips of he and Josh Allen and the Bills GM and many others discussing this. Obviously, this has been a massive human interest story that fortunately seems to be trending in the right direction. But for those who are unaware of Sean McDermott and kind of his personality and what it is that lends you to say that about him, what can you kind of tell us?
Yeah, I think a perfect moment that played out during that game or after the game really stopped was Sean McDermott going over to the Bengals head coach and saying, I don't think we should continue this game. I need to go be at the hospital with Damar Hamlin. And I think that kind of just in the perfect kind of bite-sized piece tells you about who Sean McDermott is as a person, who he is as a head coach. We later heard from the players that once they all went to the locker room that Sean McDermott ultimately left it up to the players to decide what they want to do with this game. And I think that also says a lot about the person that he is. The fact that he leans on his players to lead in big moments and allows them to also make decisions. I'm working on a story right now about the type of leader that he is. And we heard from Josh Allen and after that moment, and Josh said he was the perfect person to lead in that moment. And a lot of times we hear about, and it's almost mundane here because we hear it so much, the consistency that Sean McDermott brings to his job and brings to the day-to-day really is what sets him apart from other coaches. And I just spoke with the former player, Eric Wood, who played center for the Bills and got to be with Sean McDermott for his first year here. And he said that he's never seen that type of consistency anywhere else. And it's the consistency in laying the foundation and laying the type of culture that the Bills have here. And it's an incredible locker room. There's truly great people here, high character people here. And it starts with your head coach, your general manager, your ownership, and then that trickles down. And I think what we've seen in the last couple of years is this culture is so good here that Sean has been able to turn over some leadership to his players. And I think that says a lot about the type of man that he is, that he trusts what he has in the building, and he's okay with involving players in some decision-making processes as well.
So we've talked to a lot of different people who have been doing reporting around the story, obviously, at this point, Maddie. And you know, Mike Giardi, our friend from the NFL Network, was here with us yesterday. I know Diana Rossini, who's going to be on the show tomorrow. She's coming back to Buffalo for this game against the Dolphins as a part of a Super Wild Card weekend. But the environment on Sunday against the Bills in what had to be emotional from so many different standpoints. I thought the point that you made about Josh Allen and speaking on the spirituality of the moment, not necessarily specific to any any specific religion, but just general spirituality that I think everybody can relate to in that moment. How cool was that to kind of witness and be a part of?
It was wild. You're just settling in your seat. I was just getting my laptop out and getting ready to, start taking notes and getting all of my tabs open for the game. And before you know, you look up and the stadium is in a full roar and you're like, what is going on? And then you look at Nyheim Hines and it's like, oh my gosh, he is going to return this opening kickoff for a touchdown. And I think that just everything that went into the lead up of this game, there's a big question of like, how are these guys going to do in this game? There's been so much focus and rightfully so, and there had to be on Damar Hamlin and his health, that football did take kind of the back seat that week in a lot of ways. They did get on the practice field, of course, and this is a group that's old enough to be able to do something like that and still come out and win a game. But you kind of wondered how those first couple plays, that first quarter was going to go, if it was going to take a little bit for them to settle in. And just to put that exclamation point right away on the start of that game with all the emotion and how heavy it kind of felt, it was a sigh of relief. I felt like the entire stadium did a collective exhale of like, okay, we're going to be all right. There's been a lot of good news. The first play of this game just encapsulates what we've all went through and just the joy I think that a lot of people were also feeling in that moment and on that day. And we learned that kickoff return for a touchdown happened 3 years and 3 months after the last time a Bills player did it. And Damar Hamlin's number is 3. And we've just been seeing a lot of 3s all over the place in the last week. And Josh Allen was asked about it after the game, and he got teary-eyed in his response. But it was just so cool. It's a moment that I think a lot of us who were in that stadium will never forget for the rest of our lives.
At Maddy Glab is where you can follow her. Bills team reporter here with us on 104.5 The Zone. So, for better or worse, the football continues, and
Yes.
Everybody's attention kind of gets distracted a little bit now that we have the best possible case scenario, fortunately for Damar and his family, and everybody grateful to see that. But a divisional opponent that you guys are very, very familiar with in Buffalo, traveling up there without their starting quarterback. What's the sense, I guess, when you talk to players and coaches at this time, and what is most discussed around this matchup right now?
I think the sense is, now we spoke to Sean yesterday, I think right as the news was coming out, or it might have been a little bit before, and we spoke to the players after practice, after the news was out that Tua would not be starting in this game. Even though he's not starting, I think they still have a lot of respect for this team and the type of playmakers that are on this team because of what they've put on the field against the Bills. The first game that they played each other in was just a scorcher of a game in Miami, and it was a heartbreaking loss for the Bills. They held the ball for 20 more minutes than the Miami Dolphins did in that Week 3 matchup, and all the stats kind of were on the Bills' side of things. And it was just crazy that they just couldn't make it work at the end of the game. They had the ball, they had an opportunity, but they couldn't get within field goal range. And you kind of knew when these two teams met each other again, like, that the Bills were going to give it their all in every game, but you just had the sense like this is going to be a really great game because the Bills obviously want to beat this team because they want a chance at the division title, and the Dolphins want to go 2-0 against this team because they already got them. And the Week 15 game, that 8-15 game, it was a wild game. It was a great atmosphere. It was pretty evenly matched. The Miami Dolphins players, they had great numbers. I know Raheem Mostert is up in the air because he had surgery on that thumb, but he went off for 136 rushing yards. I mean, Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill posted good numbers. So I think there's a respect level from the Buffalo Bills. And, like, hey, even though Tua is not starting, they still have some great weapons in Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill. They still have a running game that could get going. On defense, this Dolphins team blitzes almost more than any other team does. They have some great defensive linemen that can really get after the quarterback. It's going to be a tough test for our offensive line. So there's respect there, and they know that, you know, this is a game where you've got to come out and start scoring right away, quarterback aside. Now we'll see who's the quarterback for the Miami Dolphins and how they do. And I would guess that our defense will be able to do a good job of kind of stifling that and not letting them get away with things. But when you have Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle on your team, it's always up in the air because they've posted some good numbers against the Bills in the last couple matchups. But the Bills are 6-0 under Sean McDermott against the Miami Dolphins at home. So we're hoping that keeps going here.
Well, Maddy, best of luck. Thanks so much for joining us. I know it's got to be an incredibly busy time for you guys, and appreciate the insight that you were able to share about DeMar's situation, and continued good vibes sending up y'all's way. We appreciate you stopping by.
Thank you. I appreciate it, guys.
Maddy Glab with us there on 104.5 The Zone. Just, I mean, it's so jarring to see everything that took place, and now ultimately what the result is at this point. The Damar Hamlin thing, it's been cool to see the way that it's brought so many different people together, and obviously with the best possible result at this point. So the football this weekend is going to be interesting, as we talked about there. Dolphins are at the Bills. There's 3 different games coming up in this super wild card weekend that are divisional rematches. You've got the Seahawks at the Niners, Miami in Buffalo, and the Ravens, whomever plays quarterback for the Ravens, taking on the Bengals in Cincinnati. As far as the rest of these playoff games go, is there one that's more interesting to you guys at this point than another? Because I really got to say, I am fascinated by Chargers-Jags. I'm dying to see what's going to happen there.
Well, that's the quarterback matchup.
Well, I mean, I could make the argument for Dak Prescott and Tom Brady being a superior quarterback matchup, but maybe not based on. I mean, Dak just lost to the damn Commanders by 20 on the road.
Yeah,
he looked bad. He looked really bad in that game.
And Tom Brady finished the season a lot stronger than Dak did, and his numbers look good. But obviously, there's been issues there all season offensively. As far as the future of the league, there's no question. Jags Chargers. I think that is a more appealing quarterback matchup to football people. Would you not agree?
Oh, for sure.
Right? That like salivate over Justin Herbert and the potential of Trevor Lawrence.
For sure.
I mean, Dak Prescott, he's leading the league in interceptions. The guy's played 12 games.
He does that, though. Like, he throws picks.
No, he doesn't.
Dak?
That has never been a big part of his game.
Yeah, that is absolutely something that's been a part of his professional game. Dak has a tendency to throw interceptions. That is absolutely something that is a part of Dak Prescott's game.
Okay, well, let's take a look. I mean, what do you think is Dak's career high in interceptions in a season?
I would say 13 interceptions is a career high in a season.
He did have 13 interceptions in year 2.
Okay, and that's the high.
That was the high, yeah.
Okay.
His rookie year, 23 touchdowns to 4 picks. His sophomore
how many games?
He played in all 16.
In his rookie year?
In 2016. When was he a rookie? His first year as a starter.
Okay. Well,
yeah, I guess he did start as a rookie.
What did Romo get hurt that early? I don't remember it being a full. Either way, it's not. I guess it's not that relevant. But I mean, it is relevant for this conversation.
He started 16 games as a rookie.
Okay, yeah. Interesting.
So rookie year, 23 touchdowns to 4 picks for Dak. Sophomore season, so to speak, 22 touchdowns, 13 interceptions.
Mm-hmm.
Third year, 22 touchdowns, 8 interceptions. Fourth year, 30 touchdowns, 11 interceptions. And then in the season where he got injured, played 5 games in 2020, he had 9 touchdowns to 4 picks. And then last season, 37 touchdowns to 10 picks. So there's been inconsistencies there. I've never viewed Dak as just a turnover.
No, I'm not saying he's a turnover machine. I'm
Yeah.
just saying that Dak will give you an opportunity from time to time because he does tend to force things.
But 15 in 12 games is a rough number.
Oh, sure. No, that's objectively bad. And as you look at this, like the youth of the quarterbacks, if for those of you who are My Cousin Vinny fans, the Ute at this point, but there are 9 quarterbacks under the age of 30 that are playing in the playoffs right now. And then you have Tom Brady, who's he's just the Grim Reaper out here at this stage. It's crazy to see just how long, just the juxtaposition in what it is that Brady's doing versus these new guys who are all coming for the throne at this point. But yeah, there's no question that the most interesting quarterback matchup of the weekend is Trevor Lawrence, is Justin Herbert at Trevor Lawrence this weekend. Because Lawrence, I mean, we talked about it when we came back in here on Monday morning after their season, and Trevor Lawrence did not.
He wasn't a big reason why they won that game.
He was a small percentage factor of why they. And in fact, he gave them more opportunities to lose than he did to win with a number of critical misses that either got the Jags offense off the field or had missed opportunities at touchdowns.
It is a shame we don't get the Lamar Jackson-Joe Burrow matchup on Sunday, and you don't get the full-strength Dolphins against the Bills on Sunday.
I know, and that seems like such a sucky way for it, particularly Miami. I think that's a tough pill to kind of swallow because they started 8-3, and we were talking about Mike McDaniel's the coach of the year, and then they lose 5 straight, and they're basically the Titans at a certain point. 615-737-1045. You can join the conversation at any point if you would like to. What we're going to get into coming up next, some off-season rumors that have started around the Tennessee Titans that are making me pull my hair out. We'll get into those coming up next. So, off-season rumors, they get exhausting. Silly season for a reason. But the number of them that have already started, man, they're cracking me up. So, what's the worst of them as we start to descend into this madness? Because we are, 5 days removed from the season ending, and already people like franchise legend Chris Johnson putting out photoshopped player edits, uniform edits of Aaron Rodgers in a Titans jersey.
Just when I thought I was out, they pull me back in.
Every time. It's just they reach up like zombies. It's like the zombie apocalypse from the depths of your Twitter mentions, grab you by the ankles and just drag you down into a suffocation of jersey edits. That's what it feels like at this time of year. Now, the Aaron Rodgers thing, we've already lived that life last year. Are we really going to do this again for the $50 million quarterback who looks like he's just not that interested?
I actually don't think we are. Like, we're just not really seeing it.
Well, except from notable people like Chris Johnson, who then bring more attention to things like that.
I don't know. I feel like maybe I'm wrong, but I really don't think it's taking.
Lamar?
Aaron Rodgers.
Aaron Rodgers, yeah. Well, Lamar is, I think, a bigger problem this offseason for us. I think we're going to have to do infinitely more fighting. Not that I wouldn't love Lamar. Are you kidding me? Oh, my God. I would kill for Lamar Jackson to be in the locker room that I cover on a regular basis. That would make life infinitely more interesting. But realistically, whatever's going on with the PCL thing, the contract negotiation, and then if they don't give him a contract, do they tag him like most people think it makes the most sense to do? Then yeah, the realisticness of Lamar Jackson being a Tennessee Titans quarterback is slim to none. But that I think that is the one that is going to frustrate me the most, because that is just it's completely it's outer space type stuff. Like it's small brain, just grasping at famous name and trying to manifest problems in Baltimore that aren't actually there, which it feels like a lot of people have tried to do. I think that's why that Jim Trotter clip that we played earlier was so important. In fact, could you play that again from our group, a clip from the NFL Network, where Jim Trotter, who's a very notable NFL reporter, is they are having a discussion around Lamar Jackson's availability or lack thereof. And what Jim Trotter brings to the table is, no, not so fast. Don't make this thing more than it actually is.
Oh, let me take, excuse me, the contract situation off the table for a minute. 2 weeks ago, I was at a game and a player unsolicited came up to me and asked me about Lamar. And he said to me, I sprained my PCL in week 1. He said, I'm still not right. He said, I came back only because our team is in the playoff hunt. He said, if Lamar has a grade 2 sprain, PCL sprain, he said, even if he gets back on the field for the playoffs, he is not going to be the same Lamar that we know. So from that standpoint, I think you could see I shouldn't say frustration, but you could see where John Harbaugh was on this, that there's really not a lot you can do physically if he is not ready. And clearly, physically, he is not ready. So I hate to hear the contract situation brought into this, because if you know Lamar, that's not what he's about in terms of he wants to be there for his guys. I remember going back to the day after the draft and saying to Lamar, if you have a chance for the Hall of Fame, a gold jacket, or a Super Bowl trophy, which would you take? And without hesitation, he said a Super Bowl Vince Lombardi trophy. Why? Because that means he has done something special for him and his teammates. So he is not that individual egotistical guy. I don't believe this is about contract. I believe this is truly about his health and him wanting to be right so that he can perform for his teammates.
So Jim Trotter bringing logic and reason to the conversation. Ed in East Nashville is next. What's up, Ed?
Hey, guys. Hey, let me ask you a question. I'm just kind of following along with the Jackson story. Look, is the guy hurt, or is he not playing because, he doesn't have a new contract? I mean, this seems to be
Ed, you just listened to that whole clip.
Well, yeah, I heard that, but listen, guys. I mean, I don't know. Look.
Wait, Ed, no.
Something tells me he's not hurt.
Let the man talk. I'm so mad.
No, something tells me that Lamar Jackson can get on the field and play this, this weekend if he wanted to. I think if he was under contract, he'd be playing. And I bring it up only because Aaron Rodgers, Lamar Jackson, look, things have changed in the NFL. If you want to get out of a deal, you can now, more now than ever before. Deshaun Watson proved that in Houston. And if I would love to get Aaron Rodgers here. And I think it's a possibility. I really do. I think behind the scenes, the Titans, and look, I'm not trying to get rid of Tannehill. I think Tannehill's going to be fine if he comes back, and I think the Titans can win with him. But I would love to upgrade that position to either Rodgers or Lamar Jackson. Thanks.
Thank you for the call, Ed. You happy?
You got to let the man say his piece.
And what did it end up being? Aaron Rodgers or Lamar Jackson after you said, I don't really think it's catching. I don't think it's catching anywhere. There he is. That's on you. All right? That is 1,010% on
Ed
you.
deserves his say. I will not let you take that from him.
All right. Fair enough. I can be a little more patient when I knew, and you knew worse. You knew where that was going. You knew exactly where that was going to go.
Yeah, I just don't see the logic in Aaron Rodgers to Nashville. I really don't. Like, yeah, he's a future Hall of Famer, but the contract, why would he want to come to the Tennessee Titans? Like, is this the spot that he feels he can quickly win a Super Bowl with all the offseason issues the Titans have to address? The guy doesn't look like he really cares about playing football that much anymore. I am flabbergasted by anybody that truly believes Aaron Rodgers would be the solution here.
I'm talking about the Lamar clip.
Oh, yeah.
We played 3 minutes of here is why it's not about the contract situation for Lamar Jackson at present. And then the immediate response is, I don't know, guys. I think it's about the contract. Listen, just because Jim Trotter says it's so doesn't mean that you have to take it as 100% truth, okay? But Jim Trotter is an incredibly credible human being who is very connected to this situation and is giving you reported facts on the circumstance. And it immediately defaults to, but.
It's the Ron Burgundy. I don't believe you. You're on the air. You're on the air. I don't believe you.
I don't believe you. Eric Taylor says in the Zone TV chat, remember, Buck, Aaron bought a house in Franklin, Rodgers to Tennessee. It's only 5 days in. This is going to be a long, long offseason, kids. But fortunately for us, there's a lot of different things to talk about. And I would just like for them to be, a little more grounded in reality than Aaron Rodgers and Lamar Jackson. Final hour coming up next. Speaking of things grounded in reality, there's nobody more grounded in reality than Greg Cosell. You're going to hear some analysis from Greg on what the Titans need to be discussing internally as they move forward with their team-building plans. That's up next. I'm Buck Rising. It's 104.5 The Zone.
It is 12:01. Good afternoon from the Superbook.com Sports Desk. I'm Lucas Panzica. Interviews for the Titans general manager opening officially begin today at St. Thomas Sports Park. The two in-house candidates, Ryan Cowden and Monty Austinfort, will interview today. Bears assistant general manager Ian Cunningham will interview on Saturday. Speaking of the Bears, Ian Rappaport reporting this morning that Big Ten Commissioner Kevin Warren is expected to be named the new president and CEO of the Chicago Bears. 49ers assistant general manager Adam Peters reportedly declined an interview with the Titans. Other NFL news, the New York Jets have parted ways with offensive coordinator Mike LaFleur, and the Denver Broncos reportedly interviewed former Stanford head coach David Shaw for their head coaching position on Wednesday. Also, news earlier today that if it is a neutral site for the AFC Championship between Bills and Chiefs, it will be played at Mercedes-Benz Stadium in Atlanta. For all your foundation repair and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
Third down on a Thursday. Welcome into 104.5 The Zone. Hope your morning is good. Hope your afternoon's about to be better. You stick right here, hang with us for the next hour, then Blaine and Mickey after that. 3HL gets you through your evening as well. Join us in the meantime, 615-737-1045. That's how you do it. 615-737-1045. So, Titan season over. General manager interviews underway. We've talked about the two internal candidates interviewing today. Ryan Cowden, who's currently in the role of the interim GM, and Monty Austinfort, who has been on staff for a couple of seasons now and is the director of player personnel for the team. Both who have had previous general manager interviews with other franchises before. They will interview Ian Cunningham, who is well regarded with the Chicago Bears this coming Saturday. Meantime, the bigger question, the biggest question of the Titans offseason, not who they're going to hire, not who's going to play quarterback, not where are you going to draft the next left tackle or right tackle or hopefully rebuild an entire offensive line in an offseason. Not when are you going to pay Jeff even. The biggest question, what do you want to be? Simple as that. As a football team, what do you want to be in today's NFL? In what is regarded as a passing league, first and foremost, do you want to continue to play to your extremes, which is a run-based football team that almost errs on the side of caution when it comes to running the football, who doesn't ask too terribly much of their quarterback, but could stand to do a little evolving based on what they are, right? That's a fair assessment of what the Titans have been. Now, we've posed this question about them in years past, and for the most part, they've been hugely successful. 7 straight losses, though, and missing the postseason for the second time in 5 years under Mike Vrabel, it'll start to make you think critically about a lot of different things. Now, Greg Cosell and I were talking about this for a long time yesterday afternoon. The podcast, that, by the way, continues. Great breakdown of the NFL playoff games that are coming up this wild card weekend is what we spent a lot of time on. And obviously, kind of diagnosing the Tennessee Titans against the Jags was how we opened the podcast, but it's available wherever you get your pod. So can you play essentially to what you consider to still be your strengths, but also try and take a step forward? Because when Greg and I have talked about this, it's not the first time we've had this conversation. It feels like you could have seen this coming for a couple of years now.
I know this might seem blasphemous to many, and he's obviously been a great player, but when all's said and done, does Derrick Henry in some way put a little bit of a ball and chain around moving forward? Because as long as Derrick Henry is your feature back, is the idea that you have to give him 330, 350 carries a year. Do you have to do that?
And certainly, I mean that.
I don't. By the way, I don't know the answer to these questions.
No, but these are the questions that everybody needs to be asking,
and they need to figure it out. You and I, we're just a bunch of guys sitting around talking like we know what we're talking about. But they need to figure that out, and these are questions that need to be asked and answered.
The difference is one of us actually knows what they're talking about. Well, I'm just sitting over here asking the question.
But you know what I'm saying? I mean,
absolutely.
Is in a league in which I think there's two parts to this. Many would say, smart people would say there's many different ways to win, which there are. Okay. But then smart people would also say it is a league where your passing game needs to be at whether it's the foundation or whether it's the driving force in games needs to be a big factor.
Yeah.
And that if you can't throw the ball proactively and even reactively, because what everybody says, third down, the money down is the quarterback's down. You got to be able to throw the ball on third down. If you can't do that with any kind of consistency, no matter how good your back is, are you going at some point to stop offensively? Is your offense going to, run up against a brick wall?
Well, I mean, in the case of them, they led the league in 3 and out. So I think the answer is right there in front of them. I mean, they throw away a lot of first downs with these Derrick Henry negative plays. And then they end up in 3rd and long situations for their passing game too often at this point.
Keep one thing in mind, and maybe this playoff game, and again, they played with Josh Dobbs, who, by the way, I thought acquitted himself extremely well in his 2 starts.
Agreed.
He's a whole different conversation, but they had 28 first down plays versus the Jaguars. Henry carried the ball on 21 of them, Buck, and he gained 59 yards with a long run of 9 yards, which came in the 4th quarter. And 14 of those 21 first down runs came out of 12 or 13 personnel, meaning 2 tight ends or 3 tight ends. And on those 14 runs out of multiple tight end personnel, he only gains 37 yards.
Titans football till the end.
It relates to what we're talking about.
Absolutely.
Is that your approach? Are you saying we just have to execute better with better people, or are we saying that we need to kind of change our approach a little bit philosophically, because that's not really the way to produce points in this league right now?
So that's pretty damning. And obviously they've made a change at offensive coordinator. So the things that were applicable to this most recent season, they're trying to find answers to the problem. But that 59 yards on 21 carries and 21 of the 24 first down plays that they ran against the Jags being Derrick Henry carries, I mean, the definition of insanity is repeating the same thing over and over and over again, or something to that effect. And by definition, that's literally Titans football, or at least it has been in the most recent season. So we knew this, right? We knew that the first down predictability is something that they were up against, and yet they were continuing to work to that effort. We saw a little bit of difference, obviously, when Dobbs played his first game, his first start, with Derrick Henry not in the lineup. There was not this dedication to involving Derrick Henry or involving Hassan Haskins the way that there obviously is for Derrick Henry. Those are 2 different players. Derrick is special. Derrick Henry can still absolutely be an incredible weapon for your football team. But you do him a disservice when you grind him down for the sake of just getting more opportunities for Derrick Henry to maybe pop a big one. Because that was the whole thing that we got from the coaching staff this year. Oh, we know it's coming. We know it's coming. Okay, but based on what?
Has that not been the entire Derrick Henry experience, though? Has that not been what has made him effective? He didn't start putting up big numbers until he was getting 20-plus carries a game.
Sure. Volume at the height of Derrick Henry with the height of the Titans roster makes a great deal more sense than right now. Would you not agree?
Absolutely. But I'm saying I think Derrick Henry will always be at his most effective when he is getting 20, 25 carries in a football game. Never 12, 13.
I'm not saying that it has to get cut in half, but like, why can't it be 17? Like, does it have to be 20 to 25? Does it have to be 29 touches per game, the way that it was in 2021? We're talking about. It doesn't sound like a big difference, but can you pick your spots a little better? Is what I'm saying. Does it have to be Derrick Henry, 12 personnel, first down run every damn? I mean, it's not that every damn first down. Obviously, I'm being a little hyperbolic there, but you understand my point. Like, he can get volume carries and still not be the thing that they're doing over and over and over again. Derrick Henry -2, Derrick Henry -1, Derrick Henry +1. Like, it is literally them slamming their head against the table.
Yeah, but then you're just talking about play calling, right? About the 1st and 10 run into a 9-man box each and every time.
I'm not saying change who you are, and that's been my position basically since they fired Downing. I'm not saying they have to fundamentally change Titans football. Like, whatever, run the damn ball. Okay, but get better people if you're going to have that approach, and at least have a willingness and a focus on changing your tendencies to make what it is that you do best operate better. They literally throw away first downs right now.
I mean, even when they were at their healthiest this season on the offensive line, it still felt like they were not equipped enough to do what they want to do as their identity.
Since 2020, the efficiency for him, particularly on first down, and him in general, has dipped. There are reasons for that go beyond any kind of projection of, is Derrick Henry done, that you want to do. You want to ask me if Derrick Henry's done? I just saw that cyborg run for 1,500+ yards behind an offensive line that is basically me, Robert, and Lucas.
What was, when you look at the Titans' offensive line at its best this season, which I guess would have been like week 1, Lewan at left tackle, Brewer left guard, Ben Jones, Nate Davis, Nicholas Petit-Frere, right?
Yeah, one game.
So a rookie at right tackle, a significant downgrade in run blocking, right, when you look at Roger Saffold to Aaron Brewer at left guard.
Yeah.
And that was just at their absolute peak before any of the injuries really started to come down.
Which started the first offensive play of week 2.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, and in that first game against the Giants, what was the biggest complaint? They weren't running the football, or they weren't effective running the football.
They were completely outrushed in that game by Saquon Barkley's best game of the season.
Well, and the defense, like what ended up being the league's, I think, 3rd best rush defense, was horrendous in that game. Awful.
That was by far their worst game stopping the run.
So it's a philosophical approach, okay? Like, it's still, Derrick Henry can still be on the roster even though his cap hit goes up a lot in this coming season. Derrick Henry can continue to be a focal point of what it is that the Titans do. And I'm not saying that every first down play needs to be play action pass or a slant. Like, I'm not saying that it needs to be wholesale change, but just gradual change in ways that make you feel like a legitimate threat as an offense, instead of you petering out in the second half the way that you do because you're just doing the same damn thing.
Dylan on YouTube says, Henry had 121 yards on 17 carries against the Jags in week 14. But that's where you get into starting to nitpick stats.
I don't want to do box score. I'm not like Derrick is going to have, a 20 attempt 85-yard game. Like that, those are going to exist.
Derrick had 96 of those yards in the first quarter, and they could not feed him later in that game because they were down 2 scores because they turned the ball over.
And also because the way that they come out swinging is not the way that most teams come out swinging. They don't attack with their passing game. And that, I think, is the thing that that you kind of sit with. Now, obviously, they're looking for ways to explore the possibility of doing that better. And there's a recent candidate that was fired by another NFL team that became available as of yesterday that I think it's intriguing to explore. We'll tell you who that is coming up next. Your phone calls as well. 615-737-1045. I'm Buck Rising. It's 1045 The Zone. Another general manager candidate reported or scheduled to interview at this point with the Tennessee Titans, Quentin Harris, their VP of personnel, scheduled to come in on Saturday. So both he and Ian Cunningham at this point, Monty Ossenfort and Ryan Cowden being interviewed today. So we've talked a lot about the Titans and kind of where they go from here and all these different things. And you heard Greg's analysis, right? First down in particular, 24 first downs, 21 of them Derrick Henry, and 21 of those Derrick Henry first down carries going for 59 yards, 2.8 yards per attempt. So it's not ideal as far as the efficiency, and they do seem to have a lot of those over the course of the last 2 years. Personnel is worse. They need to fix that. Their offense can only get them so far as it is, and certainly made compounded to be made even harder with the kind of issues that they had on the injury report. So now, basically, once you figure out the general manager situation, or while you're figuring out the general manager situation, you've got a coaching search to conduct on several fronts. Defensive backs, offensive line, but first and foremost, the offensive coordinator. Now, we brought up the three main suspects who are going to be linked to this interview process. Tim Kelly, internally. You have Bill O'Brien, formerly of Alabama, and who used to be Mike Vrabel's boss.
Still technically at Alabama.
Right. But didn't Saban give some comments the other day about Bill O'Brien and like the future there? Did I misread something? I thought he had commented publicly on kind of what it was that Bill O'Brien's next step might be. But maybe I'm misremembering.
Not that I've seen, but as of right now, Bill O'Brien is employed by the University of Alabama.
All right, but expected to be receiving NFL interest yet again. Then there's Cliff Kingsbury, who is an unconventional candidate only by nature of, it's a completely different style of offense that you would be bringing in if that was your hire. But connections to Mike Vrabel, former teammates. They still hang out at the Derby when Tom Brady goes, and Julian Edelman and Wes Welker. Was it Edelman or Welker that was rolling and flinging $100 bills at the crowd? I can't remember which one of those. Either way, looks like a good time at the Tom Brady Derby party every year. So now there's a couple other names that are going to get floated, but one that really intrigued me is Mike LaFleur. So you've already employed Matt LaFleur, but this is his brother Mike. He is formerly, as of about a week ago, the Jets' offensive coordinator. Their disastrous finish to the season included failing to score a touchdown. How many games do you think at the end of the year?
Last three, right?
Yeah, it's the last three. Now, their quarterback situation has been very, very much discussed, and they're obviously already on the replacement search for him. Zach Wilson's regression is a question that I have in all of this, because obviously whatever Mike LaFleur and the Jets offensive coaching staff was doing was not good enough to get what they thought they might be able to get out of Zach Wilson at the time. And they may be done with Zach Wilson anyway, but it's clear that he got worse, not better. Now, I have read public comments from Robert Saleh, the Jets head coach, supporting Matt LaFleur late in the season.
Mike LaFleur
late in the season, that's going to happen so often. I hate that. Don't like that at all.
I mean, what's the age difference there? Probably I think 7-8 years. I think Mike is in his mid-30s. Matt's 43.
Which is funny because Matt looks significantly younger than Mike does.
Yeah.
Maybe that's what coaching in New York will do to you.
And Mike spent part of the Shanahan coaching tree like Matt. Mike spent more time under Shanahan than Matt had at any point in his career. Mike came on with the Browns in 2014 as an intern, an offensive assistant with Atlanta in 15 and 16, and then was the passing game coordinator for the 49ers from 17 through 2020 under Shanahan.
And that's where Saleh came from. He was the 49ers DC before he got the job. So obviously, Robert Saleh has a style of offense that he's interested in. Kyle Shanahan is very well regarded, as is the system that he runs. Mike LaFleur's endeavor and challenge was to run a version of that offense. And there were times where the Jets' offense looked functional, but really mostly with Mike White, while the defense did a lot to kind of shoulder the burden there. There were there was an internal discussion basically had reported by the New York Post that ultimately decided on, all right, Mike, you can go explore other opportunities. We're not actively seeking to retain you here, so it's okay to get a jump on that. They were 29th, the Jets, in scoring, which, by the way, better than Titans. 29th in scoring, number 25 in total offense, 31st in red zone percentage. Oof. While changing quarterbacks count them 6 times this season. Be it Flacco, be it White, be it Wilson. I don't think they're. Oh, and then my guy, the running quarterback that had like a hot second after Zach Wilson got pulled from a primetime game. I'm forgetting his name. Strevler?
Clevenger?
Strevler sounds right.
I don't think he existed. By the way, you know who? Yeah, that didn't happen.
A figment of our imagination.
You know who else the Jets fired this week?
Who?
Offensive line coach John Benton, who also was under Shanahan in San Francisco, worked with Saleh and LaFleur from 2017 to 2020, and he was the offensive line coach and run game coordinator the last 2 years with the Jets.
So I have seen many calls on the internet for the return of Mike Munchak to be here as the offensive line coach. Now, he was out of football for this past season. He was previously with the Denver Broncos. I know his family lives out there.
Yeah, hasn't coached since last year. Yeah.
Right. So he's been out. And by the way, Mark Munchak's still regarded as one of the best offensive line coaches in football and obviously has great history here as both a player and a coach. But what I was told about Mike Munchak is that Munchak's not a yes man, and Mike Vrabel likes his yes men. So what that dynamic, it's almost like a Jimbo situation where Jimbo hired the offensive coordinator who's not going to be, not going to feel overwhelmed and pushing back on an established SEC head coach. I don't know if such a thing exists for Mike Vrabel.
Bobby Petrino, the antithesis of a yes man.
What? So who that might be for Vrabel is an entirely different question. But I think that those are situations that are interesting to monitor because we'll talk about that. Diana has a really good grasp on the Jets' circumstance. Diana Rossini of ESPN, she'll be on the show tomorrow at 11 o'clock, and Coach Mack will be at 11:30. So we'll talk to Diana more about Mike LaFleur because I want to know more about the circumstances there because obviously the Jets' issues start first and foremost with the quarterback, but the job of the coaching is to try and turn the number 2 overall pick into something not even good but functional, and they couldn't even manage to do that this year. So I'm hit or miss on the idea of Mike LaFleur without more details at this time.
But philosophically, on at surface level, it seems like it would be a good fit.
Oh, sure. I mean, I think that it's exactly it's the trajectory that they need to be on. They can still be a run-first offense and not run the ball on every first down. That's basically what we've come to the conclusion on. Now,
that's kind of what San Francisco is, right?
No, San Francisco is absolutely a run-first team. Like they are run-first, play action pass, create the windows off of your outside zone scheme, and get the quarterback in positions that are helpful to him. Let the system help the quarterback. Don't put so much on the quarterback that he needs to be the driving force of the offense. The offense is the driving force of things. The quarterback's job is to execute within it.
Sounds familiar?
Yeah. By the way, that version for the Titans was the best offense in the Titans era of football. Like 2020, when they were at their peak, that's exactly what it was. That's exactly what it was, the 2019 run to the playoffs after they figured out, okay, get Mariota out of there and run Derrick Henry, when they had the ability to get away with that and make it happen. Now, here's an interesting note, and the reporter on this is Ryan Dunleavy and Brian Costello, both of the New York Post. It is difficult to envision LaFleur resurfacing as a play caller in 2023. He was the passing game coordinator for the Niners from 17 to 20, also worked with receivers. Though a return to San Francisco is possible, Shanahan's tree also presents landing spots with the Dolphins, most logically with his older brother, Matt LaFleur. Saleh and the older LaFleur are as close as brothers, so there's no doubt a personal element to this change would be involved. So that seems more like speculation than reporting on behalf of the New York Post, but I do think that's notable for them to put their names on. It's difficult to envision this guy being a play caller in the coming season. Now, maybe that's by nature of a lot of these head coaches call their own plays based on the system that Mike LaFleur runs. So
that's kind of how I read that. Like, go be the offensive coordinator of the Packers when your older brother's the one calling the plays.
Go be Kevin O'Connell, right? You were the Rams OC, but you didn't call the plays. And then, you turned out to be a decent head coaching hire, and Kevin O'Connell has done well with Minnesota, though they still have their disaster moments. A.J. Parkinson says, don't trust what the New York Post says. It's basically a smut magazine. Their headlines are always enjoyable. I do find that. I mean, they have credible sports reporters there, but I do think that somebody being willing to put their name on difficult to envision him resurfacing as a play caller while he could be an offense coordinator somewhere. It sounds more like they're alleging that he would be a better offensive coordinator where he doesn't have to call plays. And by the way, that is something that I don't think people consider enough. Because I'm sure Todd Downing knows offensive football. You know what I'm saying? But you put him out there in a game situation, and it's just kind of like, what the bleep? And it looks disjointed, and it looks clunky, and it looks like, and obviously there's reasons personnel-wise why that contribute to that. But I have no doubt in my mind that Todd Downing is somebody who knows offensive football. And yet, when you put him in the play-calling situation, how much that translates, it's like the players, what Mike Vrabel always said. Can you take the practice field to the playing field? And that seems, in principle, something that they very, very much struggled to do. So we'll see what develops as far as this is concerned, and kind of to bring it back around. Those three, I think, are still the biggest names.
You say them again. It was Mike LaFleur, Cliff Kingsbury.
No,
you did not include Kingsbury.
I did not include Mike LaFleur.
Oh, okay.
I would include in this conversation, for the purposes of the Titans specifically, Tim Kelly, who has received interest from Mike Vrabel as far as potentially giving, as interviewing him for the offensive coordinator job. That is something, plus institutional knowledge. I do think that benefits him. Bill O'Brien, I do think, has to be considered just by nature of their relationship and by the fact that he will, at some point, explore these NFL opportunities that are out there, even though he remains at Alabama as the OC right now. And then I think Kingsbury is probably the wild card in all of this, but I do think that he's a more likely candidate than LaFleur based on
that report?
Not based on that report, but I do think that there are connections there that make him more likely, that make Kingsbury more likely than not. I do think that the report matters, though.
Why, just because they were teammates?
Yeah, I do think that matters. I do think that matters in a big way. I mean, this is something like, for the purposes of, would you say that it's inherently important for a general manager candidate to have football playing experience?
For a general manager?
For a general manager candidate to have football playing experience, would you say that is inherently important to the job?
NFL experience or just
college or pro, let's say?
No, I think you could be a good general manager without football playing experience.
All 8 of the candidates that the Titans have requested have college or pro playing experience. I think that is important to them. There are certain, and listen, it doesn't mean that they won't interview somebody who hasn't coached or played college or pro football.
Did Robinson play college ball?
Yeah, it was at a small, like, directional type of school. Okay. I can't remember the name of it. He was a defensive lineman and then was a defensive line coach at that same university, if my memory serves correctly. I'd have to go back and fact check myself. But those are the kind of things that you have to keep in mind when you're considering who it is that's making the hiring. And I do think that Mike Vrabel does value institutional knowledge and personal connections, people that he knows he can work with well, because Mike is not easy to work with.
The Kingsbury thing still just seems far-fetched to me.
I mean, they may not even interview Cliff for right now. We don't know where the interview process has led them just yet.
I just feel like beyond that connection of them playing together briefly with the New England Patriots, it's hard for me to string together anything else on why that would make sense for this team and what their philosophy has always been.
I'm first and foremost looking at the people that Mike has relationships with that will be available as far as these positions are concerned. And then once you work through those candidates, I think that you can start to explore the Mike LaFleurs of the world. And that's just kind of the process that I think this is going, the direction that I think this process is going to take.
Well, there might not be a relationship, but there may be a connection there, obviously having employed his older brother.
No, I'm sure. I mean, listen, coaches know other coaches. Like, they're all at the combine together. Like, the coordinators aren't at the owners' meetings and stuff like that. But, like, all of these people run largely in the same circles. And obviously, there would be connections between Mike LaFleur and Mike Vrabel if you want to go, 6 degrees of separation from Kevin Bacon or whatever the game is. Nick Ewing correctly points out John Robinson played at Southeast Missouri State, so I was right. Directional school. Picturing J-Rob in a defensive line stance now, says Vibe Runners. Yes, indeed. Really? I don't have to say that, do I? Is there an actual name?
It's the name he gave me.
Daddy Hot Drops on line 1. What's up?
What's up, guys? It's Daddy Hot Drops. Hope everyone's doing good. Robert, if you're still back there, hope you kept your clothes on yesterday. Wanted to ask, more likely, hire someone from within as a GM, hire someone from within as an OC. That's all I got.
Oh, that's a good question. I would say, I mean, what if they end up doing both? I think both would be interesting. I don't know how fans would handle that. I would say that based on just like where things are right now, I would say that offensive coordinator being internal is more likely. Just because we know how interested Vrabel has been in Tim in that position before. Now, I mean, he may have a good working relationship. He does seem to have a good working relationship with Ryan Cowden. That doesn't necessarily guarantee that Ryan Cowden's going to be the next general manager. Nor does a good working relationship and previous interest guarantee that Tim Kelly will be the next play caller of the Tennessee Titans. But, Tim Kelly, I do think, is the most likely scenario right now. But we'll see. They could interview some outside-the-box candidates at this point. They did that a couple of years ago. When they were looking for Dean Pease replacements as well.
Like if there were betting odds, which I haven't seen any betting odds on the Titans' next OC, Tim Kelly would be at the top.
Oh, yeah. Oh, for sure. By a considerable margin. Last call for phone calls. Get to some polls. That's next. Man, we're packed tomorrow. Ron Slay's going to be in here. It must be Kentucky week. And never has the term Kentucky been more applicable than to this year's Kentucky Wildcats.
Place is going to be rowdy on Saturday.
Thompson Bowling Arena.
Retiring Chris Lofton's number 5, the number 5 team in the country, Tennessee, hosting a reeling Kentucky team.
Keep them reeling. Make my day. Well, I was talking about this at the place that I go to work out for whatever reason. There's a fair amount of Indiana fans that go to my gym. And we were, because I told you, I came in here decked out in my IU gear. And what did I say? I said they're going to lose to Penn State.
Did they?
They lost it. They lost bad to Penn State.
That's embarrassing.
I'm aware, bud. Thank you. I know. Literally, the three of us amongst ourselves in the warm-up line this morning were like, I think we're just going to switch our allegiances to Tennessee. Tennessee for the rest of the year at this point. You already have my football allegiance. You may have my basketball allegiance too.
Baseball too.
Yeah, probably.
Well, you've got the villain shirt.
Yeah. My only College World Series trip was because Indiana made it. So
you're a full-blown Vol at this point.
Well,
I mean, you wear more orange in here on work days than I do.
Because they make me happy. Unlike my sport team, my college program.
What a wild thing to clip off and travel back in time 8 years and show to a Tennessee fan. Someone coming to Nashville and flipping to the Vols because they make him happy.
They make me happy. They're fun, both in football and basketball. In fact, they play the style of basketball that at its height Indiana used to make me happiest with. And now they're just miserable. Oh, so bad. Anyway, as far I can't remember. Oh, Slay is going to be here tomorrow. Diana Rossini of ESPN will get some good information on the general manager search and offensive coordinator candidates with our great friend who's recently back off maternity leave, dropped right back into the middle of things, and she's killing it. I could not be more impressed. Even Giardi, as much as I hate Giardi did a great job with the DeMar Hamlin stuff. So we're grateful to have talented friends that way. Last call for phone calls, 615-737-1045. Richard in Winchester up next.
Hey, guys. How y'all doing?
Great.
Okay, I'm going to disagree 100% about the GM needing to have been on the field, a football player. I think as recently, I haven't been keeping up with it lately, but I think as recently as a decade ago, more than half of the GMs didn't play football. So now they're going to have a lot of people like scouts and everybody working for them. And the majority of those probably, have on the field experience. But I 100% I disagree that the GM has to have played football. I just disagree.
Well, I mean, that's fine, Richard. You're entitled to disagree. But as I said, every candidate that they requested an interview with has played football at some level. You see what I'm saying? It's not about your personal preference. It's about theirs.
Right, but I'm saying it doesn't matter one way or the other. I guess I can put it that way.
Well, I think based on their interview request list, they would disagree with that assessment. We'll see. What's up?
What?
Your microphone's on. I assume you had something to say.
I always have something to say.
Just not
right now.
Okay. Who's on line 2?
This is Graham in Nashville.
Graham in Nashville, and then we'll do some polls. Hey, Graham.
Hello. I want to get your opinion on Matt Nagy as an offensive coordinator candidate, but can you clear up for me? I know the Jets tried to hire him as their OC before he was the Bears head coach and got blocked, but I thought teams couldn't block a coach from taking a higher position.
Well, teams can block interviews. They can't block them. I mean, you're not going to hire somebody that you don't interview. They can block the interview process. That's what happened with the Texans and Tim Kelly while he was still on their staff when Mike Vrabel tried to interview or requested an interview of Tim Kelly as they were looking to replace, I think at that time, I think they were trying to replace Matt LaFleur when they requested the Kelly interview before they ended up going internal and landing on Arthur Smith. Matt Nagy looks like he's very comfortable back with the Chiefs. He looks like he's having a great time. I don't know if he wants to take a lateral move, even though Andy Reid calls the plays in Kansas City. That would be an interesting dynamic. Either way, polls.
All right, Dan. I reckon I'll talk about a poll update. This is Carl Childers. There's a young feller. I think he's got the final numbers. Here's the producer of the Buck Rising show. A feller named Lucas Panzeker. Got any mustard and biscuits?
Presented by Two Rivers Ford, who sells below MSRP on all non-specialty new Fords. At this stage, who would be your number one candidate to be the offensive coordinator of the Tennessee Titans? Ben says Frank Reich.
Yeah, I just don't think he's an offensive coordinator candidate. I think people keep cycling that one through just because he used to be, but I think Frank Reich may be past that phase.
Chris says Frank Reich or Joe Brady, though I wouldn't hate the idea of Cliff Kingsbury or Brian Hartline.
Is Joe Brady out right now? Like, is he, because he wasn't with Carolina.
Well, he was let go from Carolina.
Yeah.
And he is that's right. He's the quarterback's coach of the Bills.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I knew he had a landing spot after Carolina fired him, but that's been some time. Either way.
Chris throwing out Brian Hartline's name. I hadn't seen his name come up.
You know, somebody brought that up to me the other day, and he's obviously killing it at Ohio State as far as the wide receiver recruiting is concerned. I can't speak to his coordinating acumen. I would think that he would be a college coordinator first before a pro team gave him a job. But obviously, that's a Vrabel connection. So
I imagine you'd want someone with play calling experience.
I think at this stage for this particular team, it is a must.
Where is Jim Harbaugh coaching in 2023? 51% say NFL, 49% say Michigan.
I think he's back at Michigan. The NFL's kind of, I think, is telling you what it thinks of Jim Harbaugh and all of his, expects to be back at Michigan next year. We'll see. I'm sure he'll get interviews, but I don't think Jim Harbaugh's in the NFL next year.
What is the more annoying Titans offseason rumor? Rodgers should be the quarterback or Joshua Dobbs should be the starter. 59% say Rodgers, 41% say Dobbs.
I honestly, listen, I'd be happy for Josh to come back here next year to be the backup quarterback. But beyond that, let's not get nuts. I think there's a lot of Vols fans who are manifesting right now, baby, and that's okay. That's okay. You had some feels seeing Josh Dobbs back in TIAA Bank Stadium. Just a little different result this time than it was against Iowa.
What is the first question you would ask a Titans general manager in an interview? Travis says, do you think we should have drafted Matt Corral last year?
Bleep you, Travis. He doesn't even live here anymore. He's still trolling us.
Sean says, can you evaluate talent in the draft? Justin says, where is Will Levis on your draft board?
I was really expecting, you weren't paying attention to me earlier when I made that joke, but
Barely
I was really expecting a better reaction from that. I would say that the thing that I would ask the general manager candidate first and foremost is, what do you think we are right now and what do you think we need to be as a football team? I just think start big.
Who's more likely to get upset this weekend? The 49ers, the Bills, the Vikings, or the Bengals? 80% go with the Vikings, who play the Giants. 8% say the Niners. 7% say the Bengals. 5% say the Bills.
Vikings feel like choking dogs. I think there's no other way to look at it. I think that thing is waiting to collapse on itself.
It does feel like the most likely candidate. Those are the polls.
Excellent. That's the show. Slay, Diana Rossini, and Coach Mack all tomorrow. It'll be a fun one. We'll get started at 10. Meantime, I'll catch you on primetime tonight. And Blaine and Mickey keep you entertained in the meantime because they're coming up next.